Well, it's autumn, and it's great when the leaves fall, but it's not so great when we do. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for going on 39 years. And now that it's autumn, I start thinking hard about making sure that nothing happens to cause me to fall. I've been trying to get out and do a little bit more walking, which is a good thing. But in the fall, we start to see impediments that we didn't deal with all summer long. I'm thinking about the leaves falling on the sidewalk. Some people are good at sweeping them off, and let's face it, some people aren't. And you can be swishing through those leaves and actually encounter something that you didn't expect that might cause you to trip and lose your balance and fall. Today, what triggered me doing this video was a message from Dr. Michael Greger, who puts out videos very frequently with topics that deal a lot with nutrition, but he likes to debunk certain medical myths, and today was no exception. Let me just play some of the relevant parts of his video so you'll get an idea of what I mean.
Bone mineral density screening may be a billion-dollar industry, but only 15% of low-trauma fractures are due to osteoporosis in older women, meaning from a fall no more than from standing height. Only 15% of fractures are due to having low bone density. Between the ages of 60 and 80, hip fracture risk increases 13-fold in men and women, whereas the age-related decline in bone mineral density accounted for only a 2-fold increased risk. So the contribution of declining bone density to the exponential increase in hip fracture risk with age is relatively small. The vast majority of our age-related rise in hip fracture risk appears to have nothing to do with the measured density of our bones. So what's the main contributor? Fall risk. Without a fall, even fragile hips don't fracture. Doctors just asking the simple question, do you have impaired balance, can predict about 40% of all hip fractures, more than a bone scan diagnosis of osteoporosis. Even a weak osteoporotic bone is strong enough to survive normal life activities without the excessive loading that comes from a fall impact, or in the case of the spine, bending with your back to lift something rather than your knees. The primacy of falls in fracture risk explains the poor predictive value of bone density screening for fractures. Adding bone mineral density measures to a hip fracture risk score based just on age, sex, height, weight, the use of a walking aid, and cigarette smoking did little to improve its predictive power. A provocative editorial published in the Journal of Internal Medicine entitled "Osteoporosis, the Emperor Has No Clothes" suggested that it would be safer and more effective to focus on fall prevention rather than pharmaceutical intervention. The single intervention most strongly associated with a reduction in fall rates? Exercise. So exercise doesn't just boost bone density. More importantly, it also reduces the number of falls over time by 23% and the number of fallers by 15%. Tai Chi appears to reduce falls by 19%. Balance and functional exercises like sit to stand may reduce falls by 24%. And multiple exercises, typically balance and functional exercise plus strength training, may reduce falls by 34%. The reduced falls rate then translates into fewer fractures. A recent meta-analysis found that exercise interventions, mostly using a combination of resistance exercise to improve lower limb muscle strength and balance training, cut fracture rates nearly in half. There are also common sense measures one can employ. For example, keep things within reach so you don't need to use step stools. Use non-slip mats in the bath and shower, add grab bars in the bathroom, keep floors clutter-free, remove small throw rugs or use double-sided tape to keep them from slipping, and make sure all staircases have handrails and adequate lighting. You could also avoid taking walks during inclement weather, and for those who walk leashed dogs, consider choosing smaller breeds or ensuring proper training to prevent them from lunging. Otherwise, the main ways to prevent fractures may not have changed much over the decades, since the classic paper entitled Strategies for Prevention of Osteoporosis and Hip Fracture. The main ways to prevent these fractures are to stop smoking, be active, and eat well.
Well, very interesting. So, in other words, all those osteoporosis tests that we have to do, the DEXA scans and whatnot, I'm not going to say don't get them if your doctor recommends them, but they're not apparently going to be as good a predictor of whether you're going to break your hip. But the big thing you want to do is keep from falling. And as Dr. Greger points out, the main way to keep from falling is through exercise. Building up the muscle memory, even more than the strength, I think, is you want muscle memory that will help you in situations where you might have to catch yourself if you start to lose your balance. And I'm going to play just a few clips that address this issue pretty specifically. Maybe some of this would be helpful to you. I know that we can be a little skeptical about how much we with MS can improve our balance and ability to not fall, but I have a video here from Dr. Doug Weiss talking about 5 misconceptions people have about balance. I think it's really quite interesting.
I'm Doug. I'm a physical therapist. I've been working with clients for 30 years, and in this video I'm going to talk about the 5 things that people commonly don't know about balance. Number 5 is that we're not born with balance. Balance is not a skill that we simply inherit and automatically know how to balance ourselves. Balance is actually acquired as we develop. When we're young children, we first learn to walk. We pull ourselves up to stand. We learn to stand on 2 feet. Then we learn to stand without holding on to anything, and eventually we take our first step. We go on playgrounds, we walk on balance beams, we play, we do sports. All of these things help us develop our skill of balance. And if you lose it, it's also something that you have to regain. The number 4 thing people don't usually know is that it's possible to regain your balance. Once you lose your balance, once you lose your ability to feel balanced or your ability to stay balanced when you're doing different activities, it's definitely possible to relearn it. And this is a really important point because so many people assume that when they lose their balance that it's a one-way street. A lot of us are under the false impression that as you get older, you automatically lose your sense of balance, and that's not true. Balance is maintained by challenging it. And as long as you keep doing activities that challenge your balance, you'll stay balanced into your 80s and 90s. But if you have an accident like a stroke or some type of brain damage that causes you to lose your ability to be balanced, it is possible to regain it. You basically have to go through the same steps that a child learns balance in the first place. And once you do that, it's possible to regain your sense of balance. The number 3 biggest misconception is that strength is what gives you your sense of balance. Most people actually have enough strength to stand up against gravity and to be able to walk. Their problem is not strength, but programming, the ability for their brain to have the right control over their arms and legs so that they stay balanced. So we have programs for how to walk backwards, how to walk sideways, how to stand on one leg, how to balance ourselves as something bumps into us. We learn those programs as children, and then we keep practicing them throughout our lives to make them better and better. So if someone loses their balance, the thing that helps them the most is not strength training, but balance challenging activities. If your strength is so low that you can't stand up against gravity, which sometimes that's the case, then definitely strengthening can help. And certainly, I think strength training is an excellent thing to do. It just doesn't help prevent falls. It doesn't usually help people walk better. I think strength training should be part of everyone's exercise routine, but definitely if you're having trouble with your balance or you're having trouble with your walking, the thing that you should try to focus on is balance challenging activity. The number 2 biggest misconception about balance is that walkers or canes will make your balance worse. I hear this a lot. Many people who aren't using a walker or a cane tell me, oh, I don't want to get a walker or a cane because I don't want to start falling, or I don't want my balance to get worse. I think this is a big misconception. In my opinion, walkers and canes are assistive devices that allow you to maintain your ability to walk. So if you have trouble, if you're leaning forward a lot, or if you're very, very unsteady, you're not going to walk. And if you don't walk, every day that goes by that you don't walk, that you don't get activity, your balance is getting worse and worse. So using an assistive device like a walker or a cane that allows you to be more independent and allows you to walk actually makes your balance better. If you're using a cane or walker and it allows you to walk more, you're actually making your balance better, you're making your walking ability better. The number one misconception about balance is that balance challenging activities are the worst thing. And this is true not just for the clients that I see, but their families, their doctors. Many people in the public believe that if you're having trouble with your walking, that the last thing you want to do is do something that challenges your balance. In order to improve balance, you must do balance challenging activities. And this can vary from person to person. For some people, it might be as simple as just standing without holding on to anything, or standing with their feet close together, or maybe standing in a heel to toe position without holding a countertop. For other people, it might be standing on one leg, or walking backwards on a treadmill, or stepping backwards holding something while they're walking up and down a step. The only way for any of us, any human being, whether you're young and fit or old and having a lot of trouble with your walking, the only way to improve it is to challenge your balance. That means that everyone is different. Your level of balance is different than mine and different than anyone else probably watching this video.
Dr. Grieger mentioned sit-to-stand exercises, and the physical therapists Bob and Brad, I've mentioned them before, give us some ideas about how you could go about doing that in the safety of your own home. So let's take a look.
One of the biggest reasons people fall is when they transfer from a chair, either getting onto a chair or getting off of a chair or bed or something of that nature. High fall risk there.
Right.
And that's where this relates. You make it easy for a beginner and progress it to as you get stronger, more balance and whatnot. This is the final product. You sit, good posture, arms across like this, and simply stand up and sit down with good control.
And again, you may not be able to do that yet.
Right.
But we're going to progress you to the point where you can.
If you have a chair, one with two armrests, solid armrests, a solid chair, not one that's wobbly, you're going to want that. You'll see sometimes you can adjust the height of a chair, which can be helpful. A lift chair, in this case, we're using a foam. You can use a pillow because the higher the chair, the easier it is, and that makes a big difference.
A big difference
Very
to
big
start.
difference. So you can start on your bed. The beds are typically higher than a chair. It's a good place to start if you're having a hard time doing this one.
Some people even go to the corner like this.
Sure.
You can get the legs back behind you a little bit better.
Yep.
Because in order to get forward, you do have to bring your nose over your toes.
Right.
You know, you can't to stand up straight like this is difficult, especially off a low surface like that. So you're going to lean forward, and you can push off your legs to start off with. And you know, do these until the point where you can do comfortable 5 to 10, probably 10 reps is the goal, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then eventually, you know, when that becomes easy, maybe it's going to be a couple weeks down the line, then you can go to the across in the chest like this.
Right. And you know, aside from the bed, you may have, depending on your level, if you're real unsteady and you feel uncomfortable, you may want to have something in front of you to hold. Now, you may have a walker. You could put that in front of you. That's a real good option. You could have a chair. If you're starting in a chair, you're going to push off with both hands and then see if you can stand and balance for about 5 seconds. And then when you sit back down, make sure you don't plop.
Right. Controlled sit.
Right. And if you need to, reach back with one hand, we encourage that all the time. But as you get stronger, if you can sit down nice and slow and controlled like this, that's the ideal situation. So the progression from a chair here is 2 hands up, good control, stand for a few seconds, sit back down. When that gets relatively easily, go to 1 hand, then push off with 1 hand and get up, stand. If you need the walker or chair in front of you, use that. It feels easy. Then you can start going to pushing off the arms or
off the legs.
Off the legs.
Yeah.
Same thing, 10 repetitions when you can do that. Then you can start going to the final product that really works well in here. And if you want to even make it more challenging, you can bring your feet close together so they're touching and try it that way. That adds a little bit to it. Make sure the chair is behind you. If you lose your balance, the chair's there. The worst that happened, you could fall into the chair.
The final thing would be to take the cushion out, though.
Good point, Bob. Lower the chair. So if you, like I started with this cushion on here, I'm going to take that off, and that's about 1.5 inches. Boy, that'll make a big difference.
Big difference. You'd be shocked. There's people that literally can't get out of a chair, and you put this in and they can't.
Right.
So
at home, you could just use a pillow. You know, you may want to start out with a pillow. Once you get through those series, we just want to take the pillow out and see if you can get that way. And again, this is where falls happen a lot, is either getting into the chair or out of the chair. You strengthen that up with repetition and strength and confidence. It makes a big difference.
If you're not an exercise person and you just want to kind of spread this out through the day,
sure.
Every time you go to a chair, when you get up, do 3 reps.
Sure.
You know, if you don't feel like you're that person that wants to do 10 reps, you know, just every time you use the chair, do a quick 3 reps.
On Will Harlow's site, HT Physio, he talks about tripping and how to work on your ability not to trip when you're walking.
Let's talk about tripping. What we're talking about really is catching the foot on the ground, which means that the person who's tripping is not able to clear their foot very well from the ground. Now, there are 2 different areas of the body which can be responsible for someone not being able to clear their foot from the ground when they're walking. The first area is the ankle. Okay, as you walk, your ankle lifts up like this to clear your foot from the ground as your foot swings through. Now, if you can't lift your foot up using the muscles we call the dorsiflexors, you're often going to catch your toe on the ground as that foot tries to swing through. So that's a problem with the ankle that can cause tripping. So weakness in the dorsiflexors is a big problem. We see this in, I would say, the most magnified circumstances when someone has something called a foot drop, which is where the nerves that supply the ankle muscles aren't reaching the target destination, so the signals are not getting through, so the ankle muscles aren't working properly. So a foot drop is the extreme, but some people just have weakness in these dorsiflexor muscles in the ankle, so that is a priority to get fixed. Now, the second area of the body that can cause tripping if it gets weak is the hip. So when we swing our legs through, the thing that generates the power to swing your leg through as you walk is the hip flexors. And these are the muscles that live at the top of the hip at the front of the body. So the hip flexor will contract, and that brings the knee through so your whole leg follows. Okay, and if your hip flexors are not working well, we're not getting that lift of the thigh, which is lifting the knee and then lifting the ankle as well. So it's the first part of the movement, and if it's not correct, we're going to get tripping because, again, the foot is not clearing the ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you an exercise now which is fantastic for fixing both of those issues. So all you need for this exercise is a stool or a bottom step. You can use your stairs at home. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose the leg to work on the one that you've been tripping. Now, if you've been tripping on both legs, you're going to do one at a time. We're going to say, for argument's sake, that it's been my right that I've been tripping on. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the leg that you've been tripping on up on the step like this. And this is a 2-stage movement. So we're going to do 2 actions combined to tackle both of those muscle groups. So the first thing we're going to do, standing up nice and tall, is you're just going to use your ankle muscles to lift your toes up off the step. And you're going to lift your toes as high as you can whilst keeping your heel on the step. So that's the first stage of the movement. And then the second stage of the movement is this. You're going to lift your knee up as well whilst keeping that ankle contracted too. And then once you've done that, you're going to drop your knee and you're going to drop your toes. And that's 1 repetition. So I'll show you again. You are allowed to hold on to something if you're doing this by your steps. You're going to pick your toes up first, and then you're going to lift that knee as high as you can. Hold for a second, and then down, heel down, toes down. So again, lift the toes, lift the knee, hold for a second, and then heel down, toes down. And if you're doing this correctly, after a few repetitions, what you should feel is some tiredness here at the front of the leg and some tiredness here at the front of the shin. That's a good thing. It means that you're working those muscles to a point of fatigue, and it means that they're going to eventually get stronger if you keep working them. What we usually recommend people do is they spend about, 5 or 10 minutes working on this a day. You might split it up into sets of 10 repetitions and do that 3 times per day, or maybe 4 times a day. And over a period of about 4 to 6 weeks, what most people notice is less tripping, more confidence when they're walking, and just more safety when they're out and about on their feet.
I'm really curious what you think. Are you finding that as the fall is here and as winter is right around the corner, you're starting to think differently about your willingness to venture outside because of the potential for tripping hazards or slipping hazards or whatnot? I'd be really curious to know, so please leave me a comment. I am going to do my level best not to let the winter keep me indoors more than necessary, because one nice thing for me anyway about the cooler weather is that I don't feel as depleted as I tend to do in the hot weather. And so I don't want to spend all winter long just sitting by the fireplace. I'm going to get out and I'm going to do my best to walk at least a little bit every day, which means I have to pay attention to falling. And I hope that these tips will help me, and I really hope they'll help you as well. So until my next video, as always, take really good care of yourself. I'll see you again soon.